The inauguration of the BAPS temple in the United Arab Emirates was touted as a Gulf country symbolizing opening itself up to globalism. Prime Minister Narendra Modi attending the ceremony was seen as India and the UAE making great strides towards peace and progress in today's turbulent world. But a more important decision by the UAE's Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization is more relevant for the country embracing the outside world. And that decision directly impacts Indians living in the UAE as well as Indian job seekers. That is the ministry's decision to revise their workforce planning policy and include demographic diversity. The ministry wants to make sure that companies in the UAE include people from different backgrounds in their workforce. This will be done by hiring employees from various cultures and giving everyone a fair chance at getting a job. This will also focus on hiring UAE citizens following the rules for how many locals need to be hired. This way, companies will reflect the diversity of the country in their teams and making it part of their company values. These revised labor laws in the United Arab Emirates will now require any company registered in the UAE to have at least 20% of their workforce to be of diverse nationalities. In fact, this revision will directly affect these companies' visa procurement for new employees. While this has recruitment offices and workplaces abuzz, it has a larger effect on the Indian economy as well. We have economist Mr. Adi Keshavan with us to answer some of the more pressing questions. In effect, this is 20% reservation for people of other nationalities. But wouldn't this affect at least 20% of the jobs that could go to Indian job seekers? What will be the effect of that, Mr. Adi Keshavan?
See, whenever we are discussing anything about UAE migration rules or job rules, a couple of facts we should remember. One of which is that out of about 10 million people living in the UAE, the domestic population, the Emiratis, constitute only 1 million. So 9 million are people who are foreigners who have come to the UAE to work, out of which 3.9 or 4 million people are of Indian origin. So what the UAE has been trying to do, but as I understand these rules have not been enforced yet, is to introduce what you call the diversity principle, by which they say that if you are employing 10 people, 20%, 2 out of 10 should be from nationalities other than the nationality of the other 8, so that there is diversity. I think if we were to look at it independently and objectively, we cannot quarrel with this kind of an approach because it provides diversity to the workforce and population. At the same time, from an Indian perspective, more particularly states like Kerala in the south, which have a large proportion of people working in the UAE, this might sound to be negative because it robs, 20% of our opportunities, as you correctly said. But we should remember that the trend of Indians working abroad, Indians migrating for jobs abroad, has been undergoing a shift. It has been transforming, and labor and employees are indeed going to other markets, not necessarily of West Asia. In Kerala or other parts of India, we have increasingly people who are migrating to Europe, going to Canada, Australia, the United States, and this is also reflected in the remittance figures that India is receiving, which we can probably discuss later. So what I am trying to suggest is that India's migratory impulses are moving to markets other than those of West Asia, and therefore one need not be unduly perturbed about this diversity principle, even if it were to be put into effect by the UAE. I would also tend to, try to recall, or it is worth recalling, that India and Taiwan, about 5 days ago, entered into a mobility pact which would facilitate Indian labor to be employed in industries in Taiwan. Taiwan has been traditionally dependent on Vietnam, Thailand, countries of Southeast Asia for its labor requirements. I don't think Indians ever had, in large numbers, gone to Taiwan for employment. This mobility pact opens up one new avenue. So, therefore, what I am saying is that there are new avenues, new opportunities, new pathways opening up for India, opening up for Indians. And I think we should be looking at those opportunities or those gaps, those windows of opportunity also, and not unduly be perturbed by these kind of restrictions, which will, I think, be imposed by countries. We necessarily have to be prepared for such kind of restrictions which will come.
There are 35 lakh Indians working in the UAE. That means there is a certain amount of remittance that comes to India through them. How will that remittance be affected with this new workforce policy?
No, already see, if you look at the trend of remittances to India, the US has overtaken West Asia in terms of the amount of remittances that is coming into India. Traditionally, the UAE or West Asia used to be the largest source of remittances, but that place has now been taken over by the United States. Indians are increasingly working in high-paying jobs in the United States, in Europe, in Canada and other places. And that has already caused a shift in the remittances coming into India. For instance, Kerala was the largest recipient of remittances till about 2-3 years ago. But now Maharashtra tops the list of states in India receiving inward remittances. So you get a picture of the shift in the remittances that is taking place. But along with that, we also have to remember that remittance figures are not available in the public domain. The Reserve Bank of India does not release remittance figures on an annual basis. But we can use NRI deposits in a state like Kerala as a proxy. I don't readily recall the NRI deposits in the country, but if you take Kerala, and because our question is mostly related to the UAE, it is a fact that the accretion of deposits on an annual basis has been tapering off in the last 2 years. In 22-23 and 23-24, the total quantum of deposits that we got net at the end of the year has been around 2,000-3,000 crores more than the deposits that we had at the end of the previous year, whereas about 3-4 years ago, until 3-4 years ago, the total quantum used to be at least 15,000 to 20,000 crores higher than the deposits at the end of the previous year. For those who are not familiar with these numbers, what I am saying is that the net accretion to NRI deposits in Kerala has been coming down over the last 2 years, which may be linked to slowing remittances, even though remittance figures per se or independently are not readily available. But we need not be unduly bothered as a country. Why? Because even though remittances to Kerala has been coming down, remittances to India as a country has been going up. Last count, the whole of calendar year 2023, we received $125 billion of remittances, the country which received the largest amount of remittances in the whole world. So therefore, at a country level, we are not affected. At an area or geography level, particularly Kerala, we might be affected. But this is a reality we have to live with, and therefore it is that we have to look at new windows of opportunity, new countries, new labor markets, because as a country with the largest population in the world, we are a labor surplus country, we will be a labor surplus country, and we ought to be looking at opportunities for exporting our labor, more particularly skilled labor, and then trying to make use of their exposure, experience, and their remittances to build our economy and provide a magnet in the longer term for them to come back, so that we don't lose their talent, neither their talent, nor their expertise, nor their brain power in the long term.
Can and should the Indian government do anything to offset this?
Even if you were to take anecdotal evidence, I come across students who apply for educational loans. I, of course, meet in Kerala with people who are trying to go abroad after having qualified as nurses, male nurses, female nurses. Earlier, if the magnet was West Asia, West Asia is no longer the magnet for them. People want to go to Germany, for instance, women nurses. There are male nurses who are working with the National Health Service in UK, in London, from Kerala. Students who want to go to Canada, look for jobs there, Australia, study there and look for jobs there. And at a higher level for studies in management or engineering, there is, of course, the perennial attraction of the Ivy League universities or the famous other universities in the US. So therefore, I think we should take a nuanced view of these things, because the India of today is not the same as the India of about 10 years ago or 15 or 20 years ago. So there is a newfound confidence at all levels, at the individual level, and aspirations have been pitched up. You don't want to be working in manual jobs anymore. They are skilled people and they are specially qualified people. So you tend to migrate to other markets, the developed countries in the West, in Europe. Not that UAE is not developed, but I'm saying that labor's instinct or the workers' instinct to move has also become more aspirational, more aware of the diverse possibilities across the world. And it's also a measure linked to India's status as a very large economy, the fifth largest in the world, and soon to be the third largest in the world. So there is a perceptible shift both in our own perception of ourselves and in the global perception of Indians as a workforce. We have a World Trade Organization, but we don't have a World Services Organization. So labor movement, as distinct from trade movement, is the key issue which we ought to be raising at international fora, because even though we have agreements for trade, agreements for movement of goods, commodities and things of that sort, we don't have agreement much for movement of labor. So this is something which ought to be discussed, and we ought to be sensitive about the apprehensions of countries with low population, ethnic population, who may feel that they will be swamped by foreigners coming into the country. That is a very genuine apprehension which we ought to understand. But at the same time, because there is surplus labor in India, we should also remember, see, 3% of the total landmass of the world, 3% of the total landmass of the world supports 17% of the population. So the imbalance is so clear, and this imbalance has to get corrected. 17% on 3% cannot, is not a very sustainable figure. So therefore, labor has to move, and there will be requirement of labor in most of the countries. If you take Japan, for instance, which has been traditionally close to people from other countries, population is aging. So I anticipate, as a personal view, I anticipate that these countries will also loosen their borders or open their borders for welcoming foreign labor. And then we should skill ourselves. We should get technology advantage, technology level training for our people, so that they are capable of executing jobs with of a higher variety and higher order. And then I think the opportunities will open up, and that is the way the future will evolve.
As you heard Mr. Adikeshavan, the UAE workforce diversity policy will not affect Indian economy as the labour force from India has already begun to move away to other better employment opportunities away from the traditional migration destinations. I am Preeja Arvind and you are watching India Today, SoSouth.